I grew up here in part of Los Angeles called Santa Clarita. Does anybody know where Santa Clarita is? Everybody should know, that's on the news right now, isn't it? Like burning down. So it burns down from time to time. Magic Mountain is probably what you might be familiar with when we talk about Santa Clarita. I grew up in Santa Clarita. My dad was a general contractor. His dad is a general contractor. My mom's dad is a general contractor. Like I came from this long line of construction family. I started out in construction, working. I was literally a ditch digger. I was working for a plumbing contractor. And so my job was to go out and I would dig ditches, and the plumbing contractor would come behind me, put pipe in the ground, and then I'd go fill the ditch up. So it was really unfulfilling, no pun intended. You caught that, I like that. Job, I just came up with that, it was brand new, never said that before, promise. Check all my work, my previous work. But it was really unfulfilling. And then one day, this plumbing contractor comes up to me, and I was standing there with my hands on the shovel. We call that tripoding, 2 legs and 1 shovel, leaning on your shovel, which you're not supposed to be doing, you're supposed to be working, right? He says, "Hey, Mr. Skinner, how's that shovel fit in your hand?" And I know he was just, giving me a little jab, but it really hit home. It was like a shock, a bolt of lightning hit me in my gut. And it was like, bam, I felt a little bit offended. Not that what he said, but just like, man, he's right. This is my only means to making a living right now, to pay my rent, to pay for my crappy little truck, and to get around. And this is the only way I have to make money. That's one tool that I have in my toolbox is the shovel. And so it was a really big wake-up call for me at that time, and I decided right then and there that I was going to get some new tools that would change my life so I could make more money, have a different life. I didn't want to grow up and be like the guys that I was working with at the time. Not that they were bad dudes or anything. I just, it's not what I wanted. I wanted to make a different decision. And the beautiful thing about this country is you get to decide what you want to do, where you want to do it, who you want to be, how much money you want to make, what business you want to create, who you want to serve. You get to decide all these things. And so what I had decided up until that point was just to do what came along, which was to take that job in the construction business. Ironically, I guess after that conversation, I decided I would start my own construction business, since that was the kind of the trade that I knew. And so I started a construction business in Encino, which is not far from here. I was there for 12 years. I was 21, 22 years old, started a construction company. We did over $1 million in business the first year, and soon we're doing about $10 million a year in construction services very soon after that, and which is a lot. That's a lot for a small general contractor, especially for a dumb kid in his early 20s. I'm still surprised anybody hired me to build their house when I was that young and inexperienced, but they did. I didn't know any better. I just said, hey, I can do it, and we got it done. So I built a lot of hillside homes. I positioned myself as a hillside expert. So I got a lot of projects from houses that needed to be built on the side of mountains, and that's what we have in this marketplace, right? So what I want you to take from that is to have a niche, and to be a big fish in a small pond is where we want to be. We're going to talk about doing that intentionally later. When we talk about marketing yourself as a buyer in this business, how to have a position in the marketplace where where people are going to call you for the product or the service that you offer. I built some amazing houses. I actually won some incredible awards. The architects who design stuff really usually win more awards than I did, but I did win some awards for Builder of the Year and some things like that, which was a lot of fun, really exciting. I sold some houses that were sold for well over $10 million, so those were exciting projects to build. But early in my career, I started this construction company, and I knew that wasn't the end of what I wanted to do. So I went to literally the same program you guys went to meet me, the Wealth Expo. Back then they used to call it something different. Went to that program, saw a guy talk about real estate investing. I already knew I wanted to get involved in investing in real estate. I wanted to become a real estate developer. And so I went and I invested in myself in a program, just much like you guys did. And I learned a ton of stuff about real estate investing, and it changed my life completely. I don't do general contracting anymore. We only do real estate investing, and we have an equity fund that we buy. We raise private money, and we buy really cool assets on a very consistent and regular basis is pretty much what we do now. So I had this construction company. I started flipping houses early on, flipped contracts, flipped houses, bought rental houses, did all that stuff. The economy changed. I had to change my strategy, and that's when I got into the apartment business. So when I decided I wanted to get into the apartment business, the first thing I did was I went out and got myself a mentor like you chose to do. I got some education, I got trained on it, I followed him around, figured out what he was doing right, I improved upon what I learned, and I put that into motion, much like you will be doing as well. And that made a huge difference in my life. Does anybody realize that when you decide you want to do something, you should find somebody who's already done it before you, made all those dumb mistakes, and will tell you, hey, step here, step there, don't walk over there's danger zone, and keep you out of trouble, right? It's the best way to get where you want to go. The fastest way to get where you want to go is to have somebody that's already done what you want to do walk in front of you and show you the ropes, right? Over the last 9 years, to conclude my story about who I am, over the last 9 years, I've been buying apartment buildings. I primarily started in Texas. Let me back that up. I bought my first building in Los Angeles, not far from here. Pico and Crenshaw. First building, 7 cap rate, 13% cash on cash return. Those of you guys that want to do deals in LA, probably going, yeah, right, he's fucking lying. But I'll show you how we did that, how I structured that deal and made that work in my very first deal so that you can do the same type of strategy yourself. My second deal, I realized that this apartment game is really about multiple streams of income and economies of scale. So I went to San Antonio and then bought hundreds of units, and then to Dallas and bought hundreds of more units there. And the reason that I went to Texas during that time, you guys might remember in 2008, 2009, it was one of the first economies that was starting to appreciate because they were creating jobs there. All these businesses were fleeing states like California and New York. In fact, the governor of Texas at that time, named Rick Perry, went out and ran television commercials encouraging businesses, small businesses, big businesses, anybody to come. Hey, if you're in California, you don't feel like you're getting treated right, come over here to Texas. We got room for you over here. We want to treat you well. We're going to encourage you to come over here and do this thing. It was like, he was like a used car salesman on TV, like, oh, come on down, or come on down to Texas. We'll have a spot for you right here. And people did. They did it. Banks went there. Car companies went there. Toyota went there. A lot of companies did that and moved to Texas. And Texas was one of the first markets to emerge. We're going to learn that term more in detail later today. It was one of the first emerging markets in the country, one of the first markets to recover. So later today, when you're going to choose your target market on where you want to target for your assets, where you're going to make deals and get paid, I'm going to teach you what to look for in that target market. So you want to be in an emerging market that's appreciating. Because when you buy an asset in an emerging market, you can just buy a deal and the momentum of the market will take it upward. You don't have to do anything else. Now, I like to go in and buy properties that are undervalued. I always buy direct from seller, never from a real estate broker, because they will fuck up your deal every time, I promise you. And for those of you guys that have a real estate license, I'm not apologizing for that statement. But I will tell you why I make that statement later tomorrow when we talk about the Dealmaker Fulcrum. Who read the Dealmaker Manifesto and read the chapter on the Dealmaker Fulcrum? It's all about balancing. A real estate's job is to balance transaction between terms and price. But as real estate investors, we want to take that fulcrum radically out of balance to make a good deal, because a good deal is not a balanced deal. A good deal is a deal that has a radically good price. That's the easy one to know, isn't it? Or extremely good terms, and the price doesn't really matter if you get good enough terms. I'll pay $50 billion for this building if they finance it properly. Is there anybody here that has a 5-unit or more building? Just raise your hand if you do. Cool, you guys are already started on the right track. I love it. That's very cool. Financial institutions are the ones that tend to buy and own buildings or properties that are $10 million and above. So when you get into the $10+ million apartment complexes, you're going to start to see financial institutions. We talked a little bit about who that is earlier today. You're going to see pension funds that own these kinds of buildings. You're going to see hedge funds that own these kinds of larger properties. You're going to see a lot of life insurance companies. These are all groups that want to preserve their capital. They see apartments as the safe and secure, stable asset. Like, hey, this is our portion we're not going to lose on, right? It's going to go up if the economy takes a crash. It's going to, inflation happens. We're not going to lose our money in the apartment building. It's going to go up in value with inflation. And it's pretty hard to screw up. And so we're just going to park our cash inside of these deals. Being in Los Angeles, you guys if you've ever looked at apartment buildings before, you'll probably see people buy these deals like, I don't know why they do it. Buying a 2 cap on and we'll talk about what that means later, with no cash flow and all these things. It's asset preservation. They're just simply saying, I don't want to lose my money. I'll buy an apartment building with it. And the strategy inside of a major market like Los Angeles or Manhattan or San Francisco, investing in a major market like that is a long-term buy and hold safety net. It's going to go up in value over time, but very little chance it's going to lose money. Why? Because our vacancy rate is so low, right? If you have an empty unit, it'll just lease like in the next 3 days if you clean it out and do the work on it properly. San Fernando Valley is one of the highest demand apartment markets in the country. I think only behind Manhattan, depending on what time of year you research this. So San Fernando Valley is a hot multifamily market because it's also one of the highest densely populated areas in the country as well. There's something like, depending on how you define its borders, 3 to 5 million people all live inside of the San Fernando Valley. There's not even that many people in the whole state of Arizona, right? So just give you an idea of what that looks like. I have a list, and I'm going to teach you guys how to get these lists later today, of every single apartment owner inside of the San Fernando Valley. Now, when we're talking 20 units or above, there's only about 1,100 owners. Think about all the apartment buildings in the whole San Fernando Valley, Burbank, Glendale, that whole market. About 1,100 owners, right, that are catering to a market of 3 to 5 million people in that community. It's an elite class that you are about to join when you start owning apartment buildings. My very first deal we'll talk in detail about later, but I sent out a mailer to the West San Fernando Valley. Basically, all the owners took that 1,100 list, cut it down to 500, divided the valley right in half by the 405, and took the West Valley and marketed that. Got my very first deal. Told you on Pico and Crenshaw, right? Got my very first deal there, but I flipped the other one that he wanted to sell, and then went out and did some other deals. This guy had, here's the awesome thing about commercial real estate. When you find a motivated seller, and you will by the time, I'll show you how to do it by the time this day is over, it's not like finding a motivated, desperate house seller, because usually they only have one house. But when you find somebody in financial problems or other emotional problems or whatever reason they're having to force them to sell, most commercial property owners have multiple properties. So when you hit one, you hit a jackpot, right? Boom, this guy is getting a divorce and the judge is ordering him to sell assets. Or boom, this guy is going to file bankruptcy because he's done some bad mistakes buying cryptos and shit like that, or whatever. Whatever that happens to be. When you find a motivated seller, for whatever reason it is, then you're usually going to hit a pay dirt, as we call it, right? You're going to hit a vein of gold that you can just follow because they usually have multiple assets that you can go and do. So this very first guy I contacted bought one building, flipped the second building because I was so brand new, I didn't know what the hell I was doing at this business at all. And then I made quick cash on flipping a contract, which I'm going to teach you guys how to do as well. And then I flew with him. He owned a bunch of stuff in Arizona. Now in 2009, I was not interested in buying Arizona at all. It was not an emerging market then. But had I bought those properties for the prices he wanted to sell them and kept them this whole time, looking back, I'm like, wow, I should have done that. Should have bought all that stuff. But that's where I was at the time, and that's how that went. So $10 million and above, you're going to start competing with a financial institution. Can you compete with financial institution? Absolutely, if you have the money and you're willing to pay. They're not trying to buy cash flow, right? They're just buying security. So you're going to compete in a different place in that game over $10 million, right? They're not. You're going to be out there trying to grind out killer deals, and you're going to be trying to buy from an institution, and your competitor buyers are going to also be institutions, right? But we go below $2 million and really more in the neighborhood of $1 million, and you've got your mom and pop operators. Now, some of you guys here will choose to become mom and pop operators, or maybe you already are. What I mean by that is like you and your wife go out and buy a building, right? You guys have some money, you guys made some money, maybe inherited it, worked your ass off, whatever, built a business, you got some money, and you want to buy a building, and so you do. That's what we call mom and pop operators. They're usually, no offense to anybody, are not savvy shark investors. They're usually like, hey, we run a chiropractic office, and we're dentists, or we're maybe we're engineers, and we've made this good money, and now we want to make a good investment. So they're not necessarily in the game as professionals, as I'll say. So they tend to pay too much. Which, by the way, if you're competing against a mom and pop buyer, right, they'll probably outbid you in a lot of cases because they want the property. I want it close to my house, so I'll pay more, right? I like the way it looks, so I'll pay. I don't know about cap rate, so I'll just buy it because I think it makes sense. But when you get into the game between $2 million and $10 million, we're gonna play in an arena where we're gonna deal with professionals, like me. And so in that space, yes, it'll be competitive, but it's probably the least competition in all of these spaces because there's not that many groups, investment groups that are play in this space, right? So you're going to get into a game where not only are your sellers going to be savvy investors, and that's a good thing, by the way, because when you go ask for seller financing or a master lease option or to carry back or an all-inclusive trust deed or to buy this property subject to, and some of you guys are looking at me going, I don't know what F he's talking about right now, but you will by the time we're done. They're already understanding what you're talking about. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you'll never find a motivated seller because people in that game oftentimes have problems. They get divorced, they have financial problems, they make other bad investments and have to sell this one to pay for that mistake. We're all just human, we all have those things. I've had properties that I desperately wanted to sell, not because just because of certain circumstances, certain times and places, hey, I want to dump this one and get rid of it. And so there have been cases where I've sold a building where I probably could have gotten a little bit more had I waited and marketed it differently or things like that, but I wanted to sell it. We need to get out of this one. Some of the things you're going to find, some of the best buildings I found in this game is people that have partnerships that they're fighting. And I'm not talking about necessarily marriages, but marriages happen too. They're getting divorced, judge orders them to sell. I love that seller all day long. I've had other ones where a group of people at work get together and they go to buy a building together and nobody knows how to run it, so they all blame each other and start fighting each other. Well, they just say, all right, best to just dump this thing and not have this fight, right? Because we want to remain friends or wherever that goes. Kids that inherit properties from their parents when they're not properly trained or coached or mentored often don't want the damn property. They see it as like, oh, it's this damn property. I just want the millions. So they can go blow it on whatever they blow it on. So this is the kind of space that you're looking at. Who told a joke? I want the joke.
Crypto.
Crypto, blow it on crypto. Yeah, or blow in hookers, who knows.